All right, so yeah, so it looks like we have most people here. Some people might kind of hop in and stuff like that. As you guys come in and stuff like that, the only thing I ask is like keep yourself muted unless you want to talk, just because if you had everyone unmuted and then we started talking at once, or like just like the subtle breathing or like computer hum and stuff like that can kind of drown out a lot of stuff. But yeah. All right, so my name is Victor. I'm going to be your instructor for the next few months now, starting this course, which hopefully you are all really excited to start this data science bootcamp. Hopefully everyone's here for data science and not hopped in from another place. And we're actually, so myself and Dara, who is going to be our ed coach for the cohort, and we'll explain a little bit like what our roles are. We're actually going to have a little bit of an orientation slideshow and everything. And as I kind of mentioned, we're recording this right now. So that way, if you all need to like go back to it or well, I guess anyone who's not here yet, like won't know this exactly, but they will be able to look at it later on. All right. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, and for the record, I'm actually like not in my normal place. I'm actually at my like in-laws house and I have a kind of different setup. So forgive me too if I'm like, I only have one monitor instead of my normal like 2 or 3 monitors. So I might be a little like trying to figure things out, moving screens around, which sounds like a very first world problem. But yeah, let me see. So you all can see this orientation. Yeah, see some thumbs up. So I'm just trying to make sure I can see. Again, it's a different setup than my normal thing. So I'm trying to make sure I can see you all, but that's okay. So just know I can't see everyone at once. So just give me like if you need to have a question or like something happens, just like unmute yourself and just say whatever. Okay. So let me go ahead and present and let's get started. All right. So again, like welcome to Online Data Science Bootcamp. We have our agenda today. So this is the stuff we're planning to go through within the hour. So there's a whole lot. And so the point of orientation is really for us to get started. For the record, I'll say it now, is that we do have another meeting today, which is our first study group, which will go into more technical aspects. But this orientation is going to be basically introducing you to all the stuff you really need to know right now so you can get started, meaning like logging into different like accounts, getting on Slack, telling you, who am I, who is Dara, like all that stuff. So we'll kind of go through that. And then of course, expectations, which was a big one. And we can always talk more if there's detail in the future too, especially on the expectations for graduation portfolios, but it's good to talk about the first year. All right, so first introduction to student systems. So there's a kind of a two-pronged part. So there's actually your Flatiron School student portal, and this is kind of where all your user login credentials, enrollment forms, that's where that lives. To be frank, you probably won't be going too much time on that Flatiron School student portal. Most of our time will actually be in Canvas, which is where all the curriculum, program information, a lot of like extra information and resources. Like for example, if we have links to like book a meeting with Dara, that will be there. If there's kind of like the schedule for the week, or if there's other resources like links and stuff that I'll try to put them in that area, and that's where Canvas is going to be. So most of your time will be in Canvas. So hopefully this looks familiar to people. This is basically what you'll see if you go to, if someone corrects me if I'm wrong, I think it's portal.flatironschool.com. That sound right to people?
Yeah.
Okay, that's reassuring. So you make sure to go into here. If you haven't been able to get into here, make sure to message me either on Slack or my email. I'll go over what the email is too. But we want to make sure you can get logged into there. And if there's any issues, we want to take care of that right away. So don't hesitate if there are issues like trying to get in. Okay. But once you log in here, you might be taken to this account, and this might look familiar to some people. And you'll see up here, oh, actually, I don't have it. I think this is an old screenshot, unfortunately. But you'll have like some information. And I think on the top up here, there'll actually be something like Canvas on the very top. That's where you want to click into Canvas to get into a lot of your information. Now, for the record, there might be a couple ways to get into Canvas, but that's generally how I do it. So if you find a different way, maybe we can share about that on the study group especially. Okay. So once you're in Canvas, you can kind of think of your course is going to be built into 2 parts. You will have at most, let's see here, I think 5 different course tiles. Right now, you should only see your homeroom tile and your phase 1 tile. And the homeroom is going to be much more of our focus of like announcements and kind of like information resources. In your phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, those tiles are going to be basically where you're going to be learning the material. So we do a phase about every month, which is ended with a portfolio project each month. And basically the idea is like we'll learn kind of a bunch of topics, a bunch of subjects in data science, and then we'll do a project on that. And so most of your time will be spent here, but if you want information, that's where most of the homeroom stuff, for example, if you also saw the announcement I said earlier today on the homeroom, that's where that would live. Okay. Sound pretty good? All right. Okay. So in homeroom, this is what it should look like right now. And give me a thumbs up if you guys have seen the homeroom already, like this page and stuff like that. All right, I see most thumbs up. Sorry, I have to like click through everyone to see if who's there and everything. All right, cool. So important things, I just want to reemphasize this part. This is, again, already iterated on here. Make sure you can get on Slack. I think I saw everyone has an account on Slack, and a lot of people have already responded. Just kind of give, if you haven't already, like either respond to one of those messages or just say hello, just to make sure that you're on there and that we know that you're like, oh, you know how to get into Slack. Our cohort channel, which I'll reference a lot, is this channel right here, which is a beast of a long thing. But as long as you join that channel, you can start it. If you guys have used Slack before, you can kind of like organize it the way you want to. That's where most of our communication will be. We'll talk more about how we use Slack, including like other channels where we can ask not just our cohort, but other cohorts and other instructors and stuff like that. And I think it's a good resource because, I mean, you have a wealth of knowledge from different people and everything like that. If you haven't already, make sure to take the About Me survey. That should be at the end of when you had, or I guess the About Me survey was sent out through an email. But if you haven't, for example, I think there's a few people who haven't completed it. Make sure you complete this About Me survey. There's also the 4 tendencies quiz, which is in the survey itself. But I did see for some reason the survey did a weird thing at the very beginning. 4 people who were really on top of it actually ended up skipping over the tendency quiz. I'm not really sure why, but if this doesn't seem familiar to you, make sure you check on the homeroom and do that 4 tendencies quiz. It's actually a really useful thing to kind of get to know a little bit about like yourself, and also helps us a little bit to know a little bit like how you work and what your needs will be. For example, like for the tendency, I'm a questioner, and that has its own kind of like ways we address stuff and things like that. So it's kind of useful. I actually think a lot of the people in the cohort are questioners, which I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I think data science tends to have more questioners just because, you know, data science. All right. And then last thing is the assignments. There's an assignments tab here. Make sure you do those assignments. They sound like really intimidating right now, but like assignments like download Zoom, which hopefully you all have since you're here. Complete your profiles, all that good stuff. Basically making sure that you have all like the necessary stuff to get started into learning like the real data science material. Okay. Let's see what time is it. Oh, good. We're making good time. All right. Next part, if you kept scrolling down that homeroom, you'll see the cohort calendar. So hopefully this looks familiar to people, like you've already seen this. If you haven't seen this already, look on the homeroom page and scroll down and you should see the cohort calendar. This is where all our events will live. Like if you're like, oh, what is going on here? Like it should be on this page. Every once in a while I'll mess up, but you'll see right now today is Monday. And note, oh, one thing I should note is that these times are in Eastern Standard Time. I'm Pacific time for the record. So I always do like the mental math of like subtracting 3 hours, you know, from the time. Unfortunately, you know, that's just kind of what it is when we're kind of all spread out, but it's also kind of cool because then also we get to see each other from different parts of the US, but also sometimes people out of state too, or out of the United States. But anyway, it will be for Eastern Standard Time, and I put it on Monday, and you can go all the way through and you can see what our different events are going on. And we'll talk more about that too. Maybe when during study group, we'll actually go through and actually kind of show you guys where everything lives. Okay. All right. Any questions so far as I'm kind of hopping through this pretty quickly? No? All right, cool. All right. The other part now is that if you're on the homeroom, there's also your phase tiles. So like your phase 1. So our phase 1 basically is like, kind of think of like our unit. If you remember back like in school, like you had like a unit on something. It's like our unit 1. There's 5 units, 5 phases in total. And then each of these ones are different topics and such. So we have topic 0, which really doesn't have much as a welcome. Topic 1. Has anyone started the topics at all? Like has seen this? I released it last night, so don't worry about it if you haven't, you know, even touched it yet. So that's what I will have you guys do before hopefully study group, I would say at least start going through this and you'll see a little bit. The idea is for our study groups to basically kind of like re-emphasize this stuff in the topics and maybe point out some stuff that's not pointed out in the topics, maybe kind of practice some things, ask questions. So it's really important as we go through this course that you try to keep in pace with each topic. And each topic will go through about 4 topics per week. So you can think of topics as like chapters. Okay. So when you click on those, you will see like the actual like not assignment, but like information you can go through that. And we'll go through, I'll walk through a little bit more in study group because I know we'll have time then. All right, so let's go to the next part, curriculum. So our curriculum roadmap. So like I said, there's built into 5 phases. Phase 1 is basically like the introduction to data, Python, SQL. Mostly we'll focus on Python. And basically it's how you interact with data and like do stuff with data, which is like kind of important as a data scientist. And we'll focus mostly that with Python. Phase 2, which will be starting next month, we focus more on statistics, hypothesis testing, and we'll introduce something called linear regression, which can be used for predictive modeling. And then in phase 3, we go like really full into prediction, which is machine learning. And we'll learn a bunch of machine learning techniques in there. And then phase 4 is kind of, if you heard of things like deep learning or big data, that's when we're taking lots of huge amounts of data. This is kind of like the new hot stuff. Like, I don't even say new hot stuff anymore, but it's kind of like the hot stuff of like people would say like, oh, like predicting things. Like if you looked at things like image recognition, stuff like that, that would be around in phase 4. So one thing I will emphasize to you all is make sure you are strong in this phase 1. Like I would say if you had to work hard on any of these, like this is the one to work the hardest on to make sure, you know, you don't have to know everything, but my goal for you all is to get as comfortable as possible. And the good news too is like people say like, what if I'm not an expert? You're not going to be an expert, not after the end of phase 1, but we'll be practicing a lot of these, what's it called? A lot of these subjects, these topics as we go throughout the course. So like, if you're like, oh, like I'm not a Python expert in phase 1, we're going to be using Python throughout the whole set of this curriculum. And then at the very last one, phase 5, we don't learn any new material directly, but that will be spent basically like a whole month essentially for you to work on your final project. And I kind of say like your capstone project is the project you bring to an interview. It's the thing that's your go-to, like, hey, look what I can do. I've done the whole data science process and I can talk really well about this. So that's kind of like the ending goal, which is pretty exciting. But of course, that's going to be a few months from now. So we got some time. Okay, cool. All right, I'm moving on. So this is going to break down to like actual dates a little bit where this looks like. These are the most important dates. Now, don't feel like you have to like write this down, take a screenshot or whatnot. The biggest thing is that this will be on the calendar, but the biggest thing is that we have our cohort launch and our graduation window down here, June 4th to June 18th. So June 18th is really like the last day for your graduation. So your goal is to finish everything, which includes the capstone, on June 18th. Now we'll have like kind of like periodic, like end of each phase, you know, you'll finish each one and we'll move forward. But the ultimate goal is to make sure we have everything done on time and then graduate by the 18th. Okay. Cool. Note there's a cohort break here too. We'll talk more about that in the future, but just know that you don't have any curriculum. There's no classes and stuff. It's a nice breather kind of halfway through the course. All right. Nice. So moving on then. All right. So what are we really learning? Like what we're really learning is how to think like a data scientist. Like that's kind of my goal. Like I will tell you is that I've been teaching at Flatiron for almost 2 years now. And I do not know all of data science. I don't think anyone knows all of data science. There's always new things coming up, coming through the pipeline and like new stuff. But like the important part, which keeps you going in data science, is knowing how to think and approach new topics. The great thing I actually think is that because of a bootcamp program, is that you all get to really focus on trying to learn things that are new to you very quickly, but still kind of absorb that through. And that's actually a really important skill when you're doing data science, because you might come across a new technique or a new subject that you don't really know, or you have known nothing about, and you need to learn it really quickly. So my goal for you really is to learn how to learn. Okay. So some things to kind of think about when we're like learning data science, stuff like this, are these little steps right here in the corner. Is if you come across an like, as you kind of do your programming and you're coming across like difficult points, there's some kind of steps that you can kind of think of, and I want you to kind of like internalize this and like really think this through. In the early days, I might literally ask you if you've done these. So the first step is like to actually read the error message. So if you're typing your program and you run the code and it doesn't work, and it usually gives you like a little error message. The first thing is like, hey, what is that error message saying? A lot of times people see an error message and they like freak out. It's like, oh, it's not working. Like I did something wrong. But your error message is a lot of ways your computer's like, hey, you did something wrong, but like, this is what I think is going on. Like, this is what I think is wrong with it. And so learning how to read an error message is actually really important. It's actually a great skill. So sometimes literally people will tell me, it's like, hey, like I have this issue. Like, what was your error message? And they look at the error message like, oh, wait, oh, I figured it out. Okay. And they move on. So that's kind of the first step. And it's a good kind of practice to get used to. The second step is like, hey, I read the error message. I don't know what it's talking about. It's talking about pointers. It's talking about strings. I can't remember what a string is. The next step is to literally Google it, to use the internet. Like we have this wealth of knowledge online of people who are very knowledgeable, who are very welcome to like share this knowledge. Literally, if you copy that error code, like the line up for the error message and put it in Google, you might find your exact answer on Stack Overflow, which is really, a lot of people ask questions if you guys aren't familiar with Stack Overflow already, okay? If you try doing this for like the past like 10, 15 minutes and you're like, I still can't figure this out, I don't know what's going on, reach out, right? This is when you reach out to the cohort. And I say to the cohort, not me directly. And the reason why I'm asking you guys to reach out to the cohort is one, is that someone else might have had the same exact issue and they can kind of tell you what they've done. But also it's for a benefit for you all who are getting asked this question. So let's say someone comes in and says, hey, I have this issue with an error. And you're like, oh, I think I know what's going on. And you're working with that person and explaining him. That teaching moment for someone else is also a learning moment for you, explaining what's happening. It's going to help solidify what you've done and really check, like, do you understand what's going on here? And that's really going to solidify your learning. And then at worst case, everyone goes like, I don't know what's going on. Like, this is weird. Like, the computer's broken. Universe doesn't make sense. Reach out to me. Can't promise I'll like fix it on the fly like immediately, but there's a slightly higher chance. So that's when we can work on it together and figure things out. Okay, sound pretty good? Cool. Like I wanted to go over that just because that's a good kind of flow. I think I heard someone. Questions now? Okay, cool. So let's move on to the next part. All right, so this is kind of something called productive failure. So again, like I said, like when you run into an issue and then you can't figure it out, instead of just someone telling you, oh, just do this, and then you just do it and then it works, it helps to really understand like what's going on. So when you hit a failure, like I used to have a high school physics teacher who would say like, my goal for you is to get you stuck. Is for you to get stuck, because if you get stuck, you have to work really hard to figure out what's going on, and you're not going to forget it after you work really hard. And so it really is a really great strategy that they show that helps with long-term learning, basically helps build your curiosity and helps build engagement. If you're just always like copying and pasting code and stuff like that, we'll talk about copying and pasting code, but if you're just copying and putting it in and not really thinking about what's going on, you're not really engaged, you're not really learning, you're just making it work. And your goal, again, is not to make things work here. Your goal is really to learn and learn how to learn. Okay, cool. All right. So this kind of goes into a little bit away from our curriculum into our support team, which is myself and Dara. So a little bit about myself. I live in the Bay Area, Concord, California specifically. I actually have two little baby twins that were just born mid-pandemic in, was it May? So they're growing really fast and everything. I actually, for the record, actually came back from parental leave last week. So it's kind of nice to be back and be able to teach again and everything. But I'll be your instructor, your cohort lead. You'll hear people use this different terms. I just say instructor because that just makes sense, at least in my head. But I'm the one who's going to be leading your study groups, your office hours, all that stuff. It's more the technical aspect. And then we have Dara. And Dara, did you want to kind of hop in and take away?
Hey everybody, I'm Dara. I am your educational coach, which I will get into a little bit more about what that means in just a minute. But just know that I am here as another member of the support team. I'm based out in Phoenix, Arizona, although I'm originally from the East Coast. And I am really looking forward to working with all of you. My job, briefly, as your ed coach, is to be a non-technical partner. So Victor's the one that you want to go to for anything, any questions that you have learning in the curriculum, I'm sort of your non-technical support along the way to help challenge you to make forward progress in pursuit of your goals here, which I would imagine is to learn more about data science. So I work with my students on creating study habits that really support their goals and kind of troubleshooting the different challenges that come up along the way. And I'll talk about that more in just a minute.
Thank you, Derek. All right. Yeah. So one thing to emphasize for Dara being head coach, don't I will tell you is that I can do my best, but Dara has some really great tricks and tips, actually I would say, I don't like saying like softer skills because that seems like it's like not as important, but some actually really important skills of like going through, like you think about this, you're going to be going through about 5 months of this program and it's going to be intense. Like I'm going to tell you right now, like it's going to be a lot of work. Don't get discouraged because of that, but it means that there are some like skills and stuff, for example, like how do you manage your time, that Derek is really great at. I've been working with Derek for quite a while now, and she has always been really amazing. And students always go like, oh, I haven't talked to Dara yet. It's like, you should talk to her. And then they go afterwards and they're like, oh, well, that really helped a lot. I'm like, exactly. So make sure you guys use that too. All right, so real quick, I want to talk about office hours. This kind of applies with 1-on-1s, which I'll talk about more in the future. But like one main thing I'm going to be doing is opening up office hours nearly either after every study group or before study groups. And that's a good time for you to basically ask questions like as a group and stuff like this. And it's going to be a lot less structured. So one thing I ask is like, try to attend at least one office hours every week. Even if you feel like you understand it, like I think that's important to kind of just visit in. And it's a good time for me to check in and see how you're doing as well. But make sure you make the most of it by, having questions lined up, or things that you had a little trouble on, or you want a clearer thing, or like, you're like, hey, we tried this thing. Let's say we tried linear regression and you're like, linear regression is cool, but like, I was wondering, could you do this and would that work? And we can maybe talk about that. So this is a great time to kind of like have that much more unstructured, back and forth. It also helps me assess your understanding. So I can catch things where like, maybe like, oh, I was doing this thing. I'm like, oh, that's great. But maybe that's not the way you want to do in the future because, something I know is like, oh, like these are best coding practices. And if you do it this way, this might build bad habits and stuff. So this kind of helps me kind of assess how you're understanding things and also kind of give you some guidance and feedback. I've been programming Python, I don't know anymore, like how long, almost a decade, I guess about a decade now. I'm getting old, but it feels weird, but I've come across a lot of these issues in the past too. So sometimes I can say like someone who's been in the field for a while might be like, hey, like maybe look out for this. The other thing we can do too is pair programming. So this is something where if you guys have, who's heard of pair programming before? Can you just kind of quick thumbs up? I see a nod, maybe some head shakes. That's okay. Pair programming is basically when you're programming together, so in a pair. So this is actually a really great thing because you can see a little bit of how other people code, because in a lot of ways, it's not like there's one solution to solve this problem. It's usually in the sense that like there's your way of thinking in solving this problem, but someone else might have a different way of thinking. And it's really great, especially early on, to be exposed to those different ideas. So you'll also see me too in study groups if I'm leading this thing, and even if I'm coding it, I might code it differently than the curriculum just to kind of show you a little bit of like what else can be done. And I'll try to comment on that. And if you have questions, of course, great time to ask them. All right. Cool. And then I think, Dara, did you want to take on this slide?
Yeah, that's my cue. All right. So let's dig in. Ed coaching, what's it all about? Why am I here? How do I help you? So first things first, and Victor alluded to this earlier, you are all embarking on the beginning of what will be a very challenging journey. And so this emotional journey of creating anything great that you see here in front of you goes for this boot camp. It goes for any sort of challenging things that you take on in your life. And most people, when they start out and they're taking on some new amazing challenge, they're really excited. They start out over on the left side there. This is the best idea ever. And I would imagine that that's where most of you are today. And people start out there and they expect this sort of nice, steady, smooth, uphill journey that's free of bumps and dips along the way. But for most of us, the journey looks a little bit more bumpy and with dips and twists and turns along the way, and that's normal. So like Victor said earlier, as you work through this boot camp, there are going to be challenges that come up. There are going to be blockers that come up. When you hit those, that is not necessarily an indicator of, oh, I can't do this, I need to quit. Oh, I haven't figured this out, maybe I shouldn't be here, right? That's an indicator of, hey, you know what? I've taken on something challenging. This is getting tough. I need to reach out for help. And so the amazing news that I have for all of you today is that we are your bridge across the dark swamp down there, should you find yourself sliding in there. So myself, Victor, the rest of you are all here to reach out for help and support each other along the way. And don't wait until you are like treading water and in the dark swamp itself, right? Like if you get to a point where you feel yourself sliding in, wave your hand, let us know, scream and shout so that we can jump in and help you. As we've said, this is a challenging program. Everyone here is here to learn. We have no expectation that you're coming in here knowing all of the things that you're going to learn here. But one of the things we do expect is for you to rely on and support each other. That is why this cohort has been created. And you all are amazing, incredible people. So this is the place to ask questions, to ask for help when you're feeling confused or frustrated or ready to pull out your hair. As Victor also said earlier, more often than not, if you have a question about something, it's likely there's at least one other student who has the same question. So jump into the cohort Slack and ask your question. You'll be helping not only yourself, but more than likely somebody else. So where do I come in this journey that you're going on? Victor, can you jump to the next slide for me, please? So the first way that I come in is through office hours. So the first 4 weeks of the boot camp, we will meet for office hours each week. This week, we're going to be doing Meet Your Classmates. That's coming up tomorrow. I'm looking forward to getting to know you all a little bit better and for you to get to know each other. Week 2, we're going to talk about what it means to get started as an online student, and I'm hoping to line up a special guest to join us so that you can ask questions. Week 3, in our office hours, we'll talk about non-technical presentation skills, which will make more sense and become a lot more relevant as you get closer to working on the project. And then week 4, at the end of the week, we will get together for sort of like a rough draft dress rehearsal, practice your presentation in whatever form it's in at that time. Again, that will make more sense as you get closer to working on the project. So that is one way. Victor, if you can go to the next slide for me, please. So the other way that I come in as your ed coach, I mentioned earlier, I'm here to support and challenge you along the way. And so one of the other ways that we can work together is through one-on-one check-in sessions, if you like. Like I mentioned, I will hold several office hours those first few weeks, and then we'll go to kind of like a bi-monthly, twice a month schedule for office hours. If you'd like to meet with me for one-on-ones, you are welcome to do that. In these one-on-ones, we take a quick break from the technical stuff and check in just on how you're doing as a human. I'm a great accountability partner. I'm here to cheer you on in those moments where things feel tough, help keep you motivated, and just help you move through any blockers that come up along the way. Some common topics that come up during ed coaching sessions, things that maybe you should think about bringing to coaching sessions with me are building good study habits so that you can get the most out of this program. Managing your time and energy so that you can juggle work and life and Flatiron with a little bit more ease. Strengthening your presentation skills so that you'll be more comfortable explaining your projects to non-technical audiences, and managing other common challenges like procrastination, motivation, perfectionism, so that you can stay focused on what you're learning and continue to make progress towards your goals. Okay, Victor, one last slide. So when should you reach out to me? If you hear yourself in your head or out loud saying these kinds of things, like I'm feeling stressed and overwhelmed, reach out to me. Let me know what's going on. I'm feeling a little bit behind in the curriculum. That's something that comes up for a lot of students. Don't feel like you're alone in that. It will happen. I would be willing to bet to every single one of you at least once throughout the next 5 months. So if you're more than a topic or so behind the curriculum, reach out. Let me know. I'm having trouble making time for the boot camp. I'm in the middle of moving. I have a big work project. I've got some sort of life event that has come up that I was not expecting, perhaps. Reach out and let me know. I'm here to support you. I don't want to ask a dumb question. That's one that comes up a lot, which is why Victor and I have been emphasizing so much that this is your community, and a big part of the reason that we're all here is to help each other. So another thing that it can certainly help support you with is like gaining more confidence in asking questions and asking for help, because that's a tough thing to do. Or if you're just feeling like you know, in a few weeks or a month, if you feel like you just haven't quite gotten yourself organized, you don't have sort of like a study system or habits down, let me know, and we can talk about creating a system that will work for you, not just for you know, like a template human, because we all have our own needs. We all have different ways of learning, different ways of processing information, and I can, you know, help you brainstorm things like that. So any questions about ed coaching before I give the baton back to Victor? Okay, thanks, Victor.
Thank you, Dara. Yeah, that's great. And again, re-emphasizing what Dara said, like I will tell you, like, and Dara's seen it too, and that guaranteed you at least once, and I would bet probably more than once, is that you will feel one of these things throughout going through, and that's not a bad thing. And I would like to emphasize again, like, don't feel like it's the secret you have to hold back and like put this, like, this is why we have this community, this is why we have this cohort, like Dara said, is that it's for us to learn with each other, help support. But I would especially say if you're feeling these things, like reach out to Dara, you know. I mean, I would even say like if you for some reason felt more comfortable reaching out to me, is that I might point you towards Dara too. And it's just because Dara has a lot of great skills into helping you manage all of these different things. And again, I will say is that especially one that I know happens a lot is being behind in the curriculum. Don't feel like being behind in the curriculum is like oh, that means like I'm not good at this. Like I've had so many students who have like fallen behind the curriculum and all that stuff, and they've come out like as a great students. And like even afterwards I'm like, remember when you were feeling behind? You're like, yeah, like I feel so great now that I'm done and everything. Like it's not, this is not like, oh, that's going to be the ending point. It's that this is like that swamp of despair sometimes like gets us, and us climbing out of it together. But the sooner you kind of let us know, especially Dara, like how you're feeling on these kind of things, the sooner we can kind of address it and help you out. All right. Cool. All right.
Yeah,
So
don't wait.
Oh, sorry,
like wave the flag early. Let us know so that we can jump in and help you, because sometimes what happens is this happens a lot, and it's understandable. Like students get behind on the curriculum and they feel embarrassed or worried or scared that they're going to be in trouble. And so they don't say anything to me and they don't say anything to Victor. And then that just snowballs. And by the time they do say something, it's so much harder than if they had just sort of like waved and said like, hey, I think I need help. Things are getting really tough. Like this is not high school. Nobody's gonna scold you or give you a demerit if you get behind or you don't turn your assignments in on time, right? Like we're all adults and we're here to support you. So sorry, Victor.
No, absolutely.
I'm
I'm glad you emphasized that. Like I cannot emphasize that more enough. It's like when you feel those things, like let us know as soon as you can. Like the worst problems that have happened, and like I say problems, but mostly like the things that are harder to come over is when someone hasn't reached out because they're embarrassed or whatever the reason is. They just don't feel like it's important enough or whatever to reach out. Like let us know. Like we're here to, we're not going to scold you. We're not going to say, oh, well, you should have been doing this or whatever. Like we're here to support you all. So I think that's really important to emphasize. Thank you, Dara, again. All right, so let's see. We're making pretty good time, I think. All right, so expectations. So this is like code of conduct, graduation requirements, portfolio projects, phase repeat policy. I'm gonna I'll probably go through this relatively quickly, especially the portfolio projects and graduation requirements, just because we'll hit this again when we get closer to those points. But it's kind of nice to see where those things are. And of course, if there's more specific questions, we can go over that, especially as we get closer into completing those parts. All right, so expectations. Here, code of conduct. Oh, I don't know, this is basically the same slide. I'm just gonna skip right over. All right, code of conduct. If you look at this, I think this is from our official, from Flatiron. The main thing I would say code of conduct is just kind of be kind and be considerate of others. Really, as long as you're kind of being respectful, considerate, I think for the most part, you avoid big issues with code of conduct. Now, it is worth repeating because it is an important aspect, because sometimes, we think we're being considerate, or we think we're being kind enough, but maybe someone takes it in the wrong way, especially, with a lot of text-based, communication, through Slack and stuff. Sometimes things can kind of be misinterpreted and stuff like that from different parties. So it's kind of nice to do a double check and say, hey, am I being considerate? Is this person potentially misreading things? Really just trying to be positive in general. And I think this, I don't want you to put on a fake smile for the sake of putting a smile on. But I do think having more of a positive outlook does help with your learning too. If you keep that in mind, I think you'll do well and you'll get along really well. But one other thing I'll say is that, and this is depending on the person, sometimes just being active can really set your mood and help you be a better participant in this community. So just kind of keep in mind that kind of stuff. I think, again, we're all adults here, so I think everyone understands a little bit of what's expected to be kind and have a good code of conduct. Okay. Graduation requirements. So main thing that you should know for graduating is that you're going to be doing all these things. It's not going to be oh, and now it's graduation. Now you got to do everything at once. It's going to be, we're going to be doing segments of this as we go forward. And then the big project will be your capstone. But one part that people kind of forget about sometimes is you'll be publishing 4 different blog posts. And we'll talk a little bit what those blog posts are for. But one thing I will tell you right now is that you'll say, oh, why don't I do a blog post? And it really does help you have a name when someone a recruiter or a hiring manager Googles your name. What are the first things that come up? Hopefully the first things by the end of this course when they Google you are data science related. And one way to do that is by having blog posts on there, basically saying, hey, here is me talking about technical or something about data science in general. So that's kind of the idea of these blog posts. And then of course, 5 project reviews, which will be 4 phases. So 4 different projects for each phase, and then your capstone. Okay. So that's really the requirements for graduation. Not too hard, right? This is a little bit of a week, kind of showing you a little bit what the pattern of our week's going to look like. Now, I kind of put this must complete sections by the end of the week, unless marked as bonus, which is more like appendix or something. I'll make sure to emphasize oh, don't worry about this part. I say this is technically on here, it says complete each section. I am very loose in the sense of what does complete mean, because sometimes you can just kind of click through and say, oh, it's complete, versus really understanding. And I have other students who are I haven't gone through, I don't feel like this section is complete because I haven't fully mastered it yet. The main thing is I would like to make sure that you all try to aim for by the end of the week to go through the sections that we need to, so that way you're ready for next week. Sorry, I saw a little label go, my internet's unstable. Am I still good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. I saw a little thing that said unstable. So I was oh no. All right. So kind of going forward, and this is more robust on the calendar, but this kind of gives you an idea, is that we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Sunday, we're not going to do anything, at least not with the school and everything like that. But the first day will basically be our Monday. We'll usually talk about topic 1. I'm usually very loose in where I talk about stuff. So even though we're on the first day, I might talk about the next topic just to kind of I think it bridges better, and I'll let you guys know when I'm doing that. But we have our study group on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Friday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time every week. So one of the reasons I did this is that we have our Thursday in the middle, and especially for full-time, doing 4 study groups each day, 4 in a row, also try to stay with the sections can be a lot. And I think this Thursday, having that break in the middle is kind of nice to kind of digest. So really what you'll have is 3 days in a row that are like, study group on topic, study group on topic, study group on topic, digesting, kind of digestion day. And then Friday, we might kind of review some of these topics and maybe introduce one extra topic. So that's the kind of the format here. You also see office hours, either after or before. And that's time for basically like after a study group. It's on the calendar like right after, but we'll probably take like, like a 5, maybe even 10-minute break, depending how our study groups go. And we will kind of like be able to ask questions. So like maybe, for example, you went to a study group and then you thought about it for a while. You're like, wait, like I don't understand this part. Can we go over it a little bit more? Maybe like, for example, I tend to run out of time. So you say, oh, like, can we go over this part that you didn't have time for? We'll kind of talk about it in office hours. I also have it like sometimes before the study group. So maybe like on Tuesday, we had study groups. You didn't really think anything was an issue. You went maybe to office hours, maybe you didn't go to office hours. But then like while you're working on the project or like on the assignments, you're like, wait a second. Like, I don't know if I understand this completely. That's when you can come in before the study group, say, hey, can we talk about how this works? Like, I think I don't have it completely understood, or, could we work on this a little bit more? And that would be a great time before we go to the next study group. So I'm trying to give you guys that option there. Saturday, so technically I will be working Saturday. Is that that's the time where like, if you feel like this time isn't sufficient, especially office hours, we can meet during then. I might even have kind of like a Zoom meeting open for you all, like for people who, because guaranteed you guys are going to be doing some work on, that weekend, is if you want to kind of go together, do some paper and kind of chat, kind of work together. I've had a lot of students before like work independently, but just kind of be in a Zoom meeting, and just kind of nice, kind of like, it's almost like a study hall. So that's kind of idea there. And on Thursday, we won't have any meetings or anything like that, but I'll probably do the similar thing where I'll open up a Zoom meeting and have you all be able to like pop in as you want, and work on stuff. And maybe if you guys have questions, you guys can talk to each other then. I also believe, I think Dara already mentioned this, on Thursdays is when she would put office hours for ed coaching. Is that right, Dara? Okay, see now.
Yeah, and I'll put those on the cohort calendar.
Perfect, yeah. And I think I've seen a couple already, so that's great. But yeah, that's kind of the general schedule. Any questions on this? I know it's kind of a little funky, but I think the cohort calendar explains it a little bit better. Cool. All right. Oh, on this bottom corner here, I almost missed it, 40 plus hours a week. That is not, how do I explain this? You are going to be doing 40 hours a week. And some people might say like, oh, I feel pretty confident. Maybe you have some computer science background or some analytics background. I've never met anyone who has said like, oh, I haven't hit that 40 hours per week and also been successful in the course. Like, just be ready to dedicate that amount of time. And I don't want you to feel surprised if you're like, oh, wow, like this really did take 40 hours. Because I feel like a few students have said this before. I even had a few students, again, not to discourage you or kind of like scare you, but I've had students before say like, this was harder than my graduate courses. It is a lot of information. It comes very quickly, but that's also why we're here. But just as long as there's that time dedication that you need, that'll help. So I will say it's like, we can talk more about this in the future, but just kind of be aware of this. And of course, if you feel like you can't find that time, that's when you reach out to, to Dara or to me. Okay. So all good things. All right. Let's see here. Yeah, 15 more minutes. All right, we're doing pretty well. So move on to the next part. Blogging, we'll talk more about the specifics, but it is on Canvas itself, and you'll submit your blog through here. I'll walk you through a little bit of like what this looks like when we get close to it. Your blog will be tied usually to your project itself. So the idea is that you would do your phase 1 project, phase 2 project, and then write a blog about that project. And that way it's kind of a little bit of, again, kind of putting yourself out there. Some people talk about like online presence and stuff like this. But having that presence out there, and then also it kind of helps you make sure you can understand it, like in some concise form, be able to talk about your project or an aspect of your project. And I think that's a really good practice, because as data scientists, you not only should be able to do the technical skills, but also be able to explain and talk about your technical work, which is a huge part. Data science involves a lot of communication. Okay. Portfolio projects, I just kind of want to go through this a little bit. So your portfolio projects, this is like the stuff you turn in. The purpose of this is basically building your personal portfolio. Again, like when we'll talk about GitHub and like having your portfolio out there, is that when you put that on your resume, you don't want a recruiter or a hiring manager to look at your resume and say, oh, your portfolio, and look at it and it's like pretty much empty. Like that's kind of the goal for us, is like building up this portfolio. So when someone looks and says, hey, what have they done? Like, oh, look, there are things that they've done. We'll talk a little bit about what this looks like. One thing I'll say is that people sometimes feel like, they're like, oh, I don't know if I really want my projects out there because I feel like embarrassed. Like, what if it's not good enough? And trust me, like having something, even if it's not like perfect, because nothing's ever perfect, first of all, but like having something out there is so much better than having nothing out there. And that's kind of one of the points of having this portfolio project. So what this will look like is that there'll be technical requirements. So basically like actual programming, like have you succeeded in fulfilling like the goals of this project? Again, it's building your portfolio. And then just be aware that it was going to be about 2 weeks from the due date. And we'll talk more about this when we get closer, but you have some time. But I will suggest is that try to finish these projects earlier than later, because you can finish them later, but that's when it starts going to, you're doing your project and trying to learn stuff at the same time. And that's when things can get like really tricky. It's doable and it can happen sometimes, but try your best. I would recommend getting these projects done earlier. Okay. And then project review. So this is actually when I will be with you, at least part of the review of like looking, it should be me, it might be another instructor sometimes, depending on the situation, but we'll look over your code together. And the idea here is basically preparing for technical interviews. Like one is technically for me to assess to make sure you understand what you did, and also for me to get feedback and stuff like that. But I also think it's a good practice for technical interviews when you're ready to go start looking for jobs. Usually this is the thing that I tell people, like they're always like most worried about as they start looking for jobs, like, oh, what about this technical interview? And I always tell them, like, you've already done like these portfolio projects, like that's going to be more intense than probably most technical interviews anyway. Like you're going to feel very comfortable doing this, and we're going to be doing this 5 different times. So you're going to get quite a lot of practice of explaining your code, explaining what's happening and all that stuff. So that's a kind of a good thing. And again, oh, I should mention part of your project review is also a presentation, because again, it's part of your skill. So again, Derek kind of hinted a little bit that presentation skills. This is actually a big skill, I think, that a lot of people might miss in schooling and stuff like that. You might have done presentation in school, but maybe not really thought about like how to communicate technical work to a non-technical audience. So this is actually really important. And then of course, talking about your code, and then of course, receiving feedback from, me basically like saying a little bit like, oh, like this is good, but maybe in the future, consider writing it in this way, or consider these factors. Okay. So, all right, this part is important. So I'm going to make sure I take a little bit of time on this. I wrote, like, I don't usually like to have a huge amounts of words on a page, but I think it's important. So the phase repeat policy. So this is, what if I can't keep up with my cohort or don't pass my project review? So at the end of each phase, you're going to have like, that final project, right, for each phase. And you have to make sure you pass it in order to move on to the next phase. If you fail to like pass the evaluation, and note that passing evaluation, like if you like, let's say like, so you do your project, like, ooh, like this part's missing, you usually will have time to do a makeup, or like fix that issue and then kind of reevaluate. And sometimes we can do that multiple times if we have to. But if we can't get past a certain due date, which is that 2 weeks I kind of mentioned, it's on the calendar, but if you can't get past that due date, you'll be required to repeat that phase in full before by transferring to a new cohort. So basic scenario is like if you have your phase project and you just have like, maybe you felt really far behind, or you just didn't quite understand it, and you just can't get that project done and completed to what it needs to be, we'll have you transfer to a new cohort and repeat the phase again to basically make sure you understand that material. Note that there's no additional charge to repeat phase 1 once. Now, in terms of this repeat, this is where like I like say like I'm not on this side of on Flatiron, so I won't know specifics, but it'll just be based on your contract that you signed, or I guess which version you had signed up or when you enrolled. But in general, like it will be that you'll be able to transfer once. So let's say you like do your stuff, and you just can't quite, you fell behind, you couldn't finish the project in time, you'll transfer to a new cohort. You'll be allowed to do that once, and then after that, you might not be able to continue afterwards. So not to like scare you all and stuff like that, but like it is a policy. There are some more information in the document section of your Flatiron School portal. But just to kind of repeat this, or to emphasize this repeat policy. But my goal for you all is to make sure you guys don't have to. And if you do have to, like making sure you're set up for the next cohort and ready to go and like know what things you need to do. Okay, cool. Sound pretty good, everyone? Yeah, all right. So moving on. All right, so now we're coming towards the end of this. It's our community. So our community is going to be mostly based around Slack. You can think of it like a water cooler or question and answer area. This is kind of like your cohort specific. Well, I should say Slack is actually all of Flatiron, but you will also have your cohort channel where you can talk with just the people you kind of know. And then I'll show you all some channels to maybe join where you can talk to other students too, and kind of people who are maybe have gone through the same material or going through the same material as you are. So it's a really great community, and it's a really great way to like be able to, I would say like be able to ask questions. And honestly, like in the remote life, which as we've seen during this whole pandemic has been pretty important. And what's kind of nice is that I will tell you all is that because a lot of the in-person that would normally people would be in person are actually online, you also can see a little bit of that interaction too, and see a few more people to kind of talk to. So it's good. I will also say is that in a lot of businesses, like if you know anyone in the field, either software engineering or data science, a lot of stuff is done. Like Slack is kind of like a pretty main staple. Maybe Microsoft Teams might be similar to this, but a lot of times people will ask questions and talk to that, sometimes even more than they're talking in person, especially nowadays, but even before that. So it's good to kind of get used to this. Again, if anyone's who's used Slack before? Quick thumbs. Okay, has everyone's heard of Slack? Like it's kind of been in the news more or less in tech, so maybe not. That's okay. So just know that we have different channels. So basically, we'll have places to like chat and stuff like that. I think I've seen most people already respond to Slack, but if you haven't yet already, after we're done in about 5 minutes, like send a little like hi message and stuff like that, or reply in the thread. You'll notice there's threads and stuff. You'll get the feel for like how to use Slack. One thing, just know that we have our own Slack channel. It's that online DS long thing. I can't remember what it is, but it's a cohort number. I think everyone's on that channel, so it should be fine. One thing I'll note is that your @DS support squad, this guy right here, and I'll make sure to put it on Slack so you guys can see that today, is that you can ask questions to anyone. Like basically all the remote online instructors are tied to that tag. So if you ping that, it will ping all the instructors. So for some reason, if I'm out for one day, or you're like, hey, like Victor's taking too long, like what the heck? Like I want to get some answers now. You can ping this over here. I would say definitely don't try to abuse it, right? Like don't like try to ping everyone at 4 a.m. in the morning. I'll have my phone silent, and I assume other instructors do. But if you really have a burning question and for some reason I can't get to it, or you just want to have other like beyond just me asking that question, or I don't know, if you just want to say hi, you could just ping this one right here, and we usually try to respond pretty well. Know that normal business hours, so kind of be aware of that too. But yeah, that's kind of Slack. Cool. And oops, I think it's at the end of it. Oh, I clicked the I clicked the actual Slack icon. What the heck? Okay, let me just use my arrow keys. There we go. All right. For the record, this is our data science support team. So I will tell you is that everyone here, except for Ben, I'll mention Ben in a second, we are all like having our own cohorts. I guess Jeff does people who are doing self-paced, but we all have cohorts. We have much experience. Some people were actually former students as well in the Flatiron program, so they're actually even more familiar with like being a student, which is kind of cool. Ben, you'll see a lot of, and also Matt too. Ben and Matt, you'll see kind of pop in, especially towards the end of the day. They're kind of like our night shift team. So basically like closer like when the instructors kind of clock out for the day. Matt and Ben will usually be more available to ask questions and stuff like that. And Ben has been around for quite a while now doing this. Matt was actually a former student and actually was an instructor. He's actually working as a machine learning engineer now, full-time, and he does this part-time, continuing asking questions, stuff like that. So everyone here on this list is very knowledgeable. What's great is we all have different experiences too. So you'll probably hear different kind of support. I might even ping other instructors to say, hey, what's your take on this stuff? So something to look out for. Okay, cool. And I'll make sure to kind of show the little DS support squad thing so people can kind of see how that works. All right. And that's kind of basically it. But some things to do before we have our study group. So I think I have, let's see who's in the, I have 19 participants. So I think we have most people here. We might be missing a couple people that are supposed to be in the cohort. But just a quick reminder before we end is that there is a study group today at, I know it's 11:30 my time. So that's 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. So we have that in about an hour and a half. Make sure you guys come to that. It should be the same Zoom link, but it is on the calendar as well. And I'll make sure to ping everyone on Slack. But in the meantime, before then, make sure you take some time to actually say hello on Slack. Meet your classmates. We'll actually have that tomorrow with Dara. That's also on the calendar. Say hello on Slack. You know, there's different threads. You can use a GIF, play around. Schedule. We'll talk about this during study group because we're running low on time, but basically having a first chat with me, just kind of say hello and see where you're at. Review cohort calendar. So make sure you look at those dates. Take note of project due dates. The first one's going to not be until about February. So you got some time not to worry about it yet. And then just get started on your lessons in lab. So make sure you can get onto Canvas, right? And actually find the material and all that stuff. And if for some reason you can't find it, you know, we'll definitely go over it in study group and I'll kind of walk you guys through a little bit, like where to find stuff. And we'll talk about that first topic. Okay, cool. And I believe that is my last slide. So yeah, cool. I see all of, well, a lot of people's faces. Any questions? Anything at all that might have be a burning question right now? No, pretty good. All right, got a pretty quiet bunch, it looks like.
Yeah, I was gonna say these folks look serious and ready to go.
I know, like they're like, all right, bring me the data
like,
science now.
Let us at that curriculum. We are ready to hit the ground running.
Oh, don't worry, there'll be ground to be run on. So, yeah, and I was gonna say, you all have Zoom, so I know you guys can at least doing there. I'll have to follow up. Let's see here. I might have to. I'm actually just going to take a picture of.
I took attendance, Victor.
You took attendance. Thank you, Tara. You're the best, Tara. Thank you so much. Then I'll follow up on who we missed. But until then, I will see you all go through that curriculum, go through those first steps, and I'll see you all in about an hour and a half. Yeah. All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow at Meet Your Classmates.
Yeah.
Thank you.